Hi, and welcome to another episode of Troubleshoot This. My name is Chris, and in this episode, we will check if your system is overheating. Let's get started. All right, now we're back again at our desktop. We have our basically our steps to do here. The three programs that I use to monitor system temperatures will be HW Monitor for the temperature readings, Prime 95 for the CPU stress test, and FurMark for the GPU stress test or for your graphics card. So let's proceed. Let's proceed to downloading all these three. Again, just open up a browser, type in HW Monitor. There we go, HW Monitor. Do not click on this first one. It might be for like actual human health, but we want the software one from CPUID.com, and just click on the setup here. Close the ad that pops up. If you are using Microsoft Edge without any plugins to block ads, click on download now, and it should start downloading down here. While we are at it, let's also download, what was that other one? um, I think it's FarmArk, Prime 95. Yeah, Prime 95. Okay. Here's the one that you want to get, GIMPS, Prime 95. This will actually put stress on all of your cores and your threads. That way, basically the CPU works 100% and will generate the maximum heat it can. So you know if your cooler is adequate enough to keep it cool, or if it's not enough that it's kind of reaching its basically its error thresholds. So that's what we're going to do also. And last one would be, just want to double check everything because I got different softwares in mind right now. FurMark, there we go, Geeks 3D. That's also another good one. Um, Basically the same thing as what Prime 95 does, but only for your graphics card. As I've said earlier, it will basically bombard it with a full load, so it can get as hot as it can, and that way you can see if, well, in this case, if the airflow in your system is able to dissipate the heat, transfer it outside. That way your card's always getting fresh, cool air for circulation. Click on download, and there we go. Now let's install them one at a time now. Let's start with HW Monitor. Click on Next. Next. Create a desktop icon. Yes, we would like to do that. Install, and I don't want to see the README file. There we go. So HMonitor is now installed. Prime 95 will be a compressed folder. So just click up here, extract all. And if you leave this be, it'll stay on your downloads folder. It's basically going to extract there, and you can easily access it. There we go, there's Prime 95, and then we got FurMark. Accept the agreement, although we don't read any of those. Welcome to being human. Okay, create a desktop. Next. And as soon as it installs, let's not launch it yet. I'm going to finish the installation, close our browser. And now we can start on testing our system's temperatures. Launch HW Monitor. Now, for this software, I would highly take the reading from this software basically as a baseline because it's usually plus 10 or minus 10 using the software. And yeah, it's not the most accurate, but it is. I mean, in my book, it is trusted. I mean, I could base my temps on this. Basically, just try to offset the value of your readings if you are going to do a like a modification or something. Like the basically the simplest one you can do is to run the system without the side panel and see how much difference the cool air that gets sucked in makes a difference compared to basically air inside the computer circulating. So yes, what we're going to do here is usually, I mean, if we're going for temp numbers, we can just minimize all these other ones. And same with the GPU. Our main concern, if we are to do the numbers, will be the temperatures for each one. Okay, time to launch Prime 95. This is a very interesting software. Once it runs, just click on just stress testing and leave everything else, on default for the value of this one. Do click on small FFTs because we want to generate maximum power and maximum heat for CPU stress. All right, and click OK. You're going to see a bunch of windows come up here. What I want to do is merge main and com, and then merge all workers. That way it's all in one big window. Once you've done that, now would be a time. Let's minimize this one. Or actually, we can close that one since we're running it already. Once you've done that, you can see here what is our maximum. Here we go. Okay, so our lowest earlier was, I don't know if it was 29 probably. Yeah, I guess so. That was the lowest, but that wasn't the minimum like average. But with full load, we are running 55 degrees C, 56. When doing these tests, I would highly recommend leaving the test running for at least 15 minutes. That way your hardware can be heat saturated and you can find out what the highest they will go to will be. If there is something wrong with your cooler, if it's not able to basically keep up with dissipating the heat that your processor produces, very high chance of your system shutting down or throttling itself or just outright shutting off. So that's one thing to look for. Um, see, we're up to 59 here. Can take a while for this because my system has just been turned on and it's in an air-conditioned room. So everything's nice and cool in it. Um, Basically get the gist of it. I'm not gonna basically wait 15 minutes for each of these tests. This is just to show you guys the process on what to do. That way, when you, for example, if you think your computer is overheating, you want to like get a support call or something, you can give them the maximum value that you got from doing this test and see if that's well within range of the processor model and the fan that is basically cooling it. So once you get that number basically settled, you can click on test right here and then stop. And then stop all workers, keep that checked. That way you can eliminate all the process that's happening right now. As soon as you do that, you're going to see temperatures drop right here. That's because the CPU is not in full load anymore, and basically your CPU cooler is doing its job and cooling it down. All right, that was Prime 95 and your CPU stress test. Next would be FarmArk. It's basically the same thing. What I'm going to do here is run it. Well, I'm not going to run it full screen because it will block everything. AA, I would always like to keep this at 8x just to get the maximum stress out of it. Let me see. What do I usually run here? I usually run 16 by 9 at 1080. And just press GPU stress test. Run this on your, basically on the resolution that you're using. Like if you're using a 4K monitor, just depending on which aspect ratio your monitor uses, you got like all these different settings here. So 1440p, 4K, your choice. But for me, 16 by 9, 1920, 1080, that's what my screen calls for. So that's what I'm going to run. And click GPU stress test. This will just let you know that this might cause damage if for example, one of your fans is not working and you know it, but you still want to stress test the card. It will put the load on it, it will heat it up, and if having one broken fan doesn't cool the entire heatsink down, your card will either throttle, it'll shut off, or might be a possibility it'll bake itself. If you want this to pop up every time, leave this checked, but for me, I would uncheck it so I can just go through the stress test each time. And once that's running, I usually Alt-Tab into Hardware Monitor. You can see our GPU is rising up in the temperature scale here. Our current value is becoming the maximum because it is going up still. And same, basically same procedure as the CPU. temperature test. You let it run for 15 minutes, figure out what the maximum is, and then from there you can just click this one and turn it off. Now this is a nice graph. This is where you started, and then this is where the basically the peak of the temperature is. Once you see it plateau, it's gonna turn into like a straight line here. That way you can get your average temperature for the whole run. But yeah, 15 minutes should be enough. That was for Mark. And two more on my list would be optional softwares, which I use personally. Unigine Heaven benchmark is um, it's an older benchmark, but for me it works better because it keeps looping itself. So if I really wanted to stress test my system, I leave it overnight running that one. And for example, if I buy like a used graphics card, just want to make sure that everything works fine before I call it good. I usually let that run for the whole benchmark loops, so I let it run for like overnight if I can. And one other uh, benchmark is Unigine Super Precision. Super Precision. Okay. Super Precision benchmark. There we go. Okay, this is a very heavy benchmark to run on any system. With the amount of graphical details it makes the card do, but it is a good test for basically your card. Um, for example, your card is already out of, for example, it's already out of warranty, and you want to replace the thermal compound on it or do some maintenance on it, clean the fans. Um, take a run of the superposition benchmark and see the final scores. Again, have it set to your resolution that you use. And after that, do your maintenance stuff. And once you put your card back together, you know you did everything right. Run the superposition again. That way you can see if there's any improvement or if there's any increase in the score. Because as we all know, a cooler card boosts higher, so you get more FPS, more performance out of it. And that's pretty much it. If anything, just for temperature testing, making sure your system's not overheating. Because sometimes it might feel hot around the system, but it's more like a case of the fans doing their jobs, pushing the heat out instead of keeping it inside. So run these tests and take note of the max temperature numbers. If you have time, Google what your GPU and your processor is. That way you can see what their maximum safe temps or maximum dangerous temps are based on what others have done or what others have used as a cooler for these things. And you'll get a better idea of what your system is running, if it's running cool or not. So, yeah. All right. Apart from that, that's basically it. And I want to thank you guys for joining me in this episode. Um, I will try to get a lot more other tips and tutorials for you with regards to maintaining your system or troubleshooting it. And for now, I'm just going to have to cut it short. Say thank you again, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.